Hi.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
I can hear you. Can everybody hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. Appreciate you guys all being on the call. Okay, I'm trying to figure out if I have to keep adding people since I am the editor-in-chief here, the Zoom account. So we'll see. So I have 8 participants here. Let's see who else here. Chinaza, you're going to have to unmute.
Okay, I know. I was just waiting.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you are speaking today, so we Kelly, by the way, I'm the president of WISE.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and thank you for doing this for us. We're excited. I'm going to move over here so my window isn't shining.
Chinaza, I'm going to be opening up, but just want to thank you as well. I'm the collegiate club director for WISE. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Of course.
So how did that picture come about we saw? Because I don't know if you know this, but the Tucson chapter posted a picture of you and some really cool bad you-know-what statement about being accepted for who you are. And I'm like, oh, that's like so cool. Oh, wait, she's from Pitt. How come we don't know about her? So Tucson had you plastered all over their social media, and so that's how it came about. So do you know somebody from the Tucson chapter?
No.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
You're a celebrity worldwide. You don't even know it.
Yeah, look at you.
I wouldn't say that.
Hey, Miss Erin. There are over 60 people that have signed up for this. Not to look, your eyes are just popped out of your head. Just be yourself, you'll be fine.
Okay.
A lot of people want to hear what you have to say, so that's good.
Chinaza, I'm Tina. I'm going to be the one that'll be asking you questions too. So don't worry, I'm also a little nervous.
It's fine. We'll get through it together.
And Tina is our collegiate club president at the University of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So hopefully you guys can connect and learn more about WISE as a club. We'd love to have the whole volleyball team be part of us.
Kelly, did you want to get started right at 7 or did you want to wait till 7?
Well, I'm waiting because, let's see here. We have about half the people.
Okay.
So can we wait? It's 6:59, my clock says. Can we wait a couple more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is being recorded, everybody. Is that okay? I think Pitt wants a copy of it too, so. They're just flowing in. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go ahead and begin, okay?
Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Laura Miller. I am the professor in Sport Management Studies Program Director at Cal U of PA, and I'm also the WISE Collegiate Chapter Director. I should say collegiate, I did say collegiate club director. So I'm excited to introduce our program this evening that's being sponsored by both the WISE Pittsburgh Professional Chapter and our student clubs, our WISE student clubs. So for those of you who aren't familiar with WISE, also known as Women in Sports and Events, we are the leading voice and resource for professional women in the business of sports and events. Through ongoing meetings, networking opportunities, special events, WISE offers its members valuable insight and connections that can help advance them in their careers. So tonight, I know we have several board members with us, including our president, Kelly Hanna, who was speaking at the beginning there. And she continues to lead our organization with relentless passion. She will be managing our chat room. So if you do have a question along the way, we just ask that you post it in the chat room, and we will definitely get to that question later on in the session. Our new marketing and social media board member, Katie Hazelton, is also here, and she was really instrumental in getting this program coordinated. So we are very grateful for her efforts as well. And finally, Christina Holin, who goes by Tina, will be serving as a moderator. And she is currently marketing. She's a senior at PITT, marketing or majoring in marketing.
She is on us.
And
Zooms off on it.
she really is a go-getter. I've been impressed with her since day one. Her work is unmatched. She not only is a PITT club president, she's a marketing intern for PITT Athletics. She works a full-time job and is a mentor to many. So I know that we are really grateful for her leadership and where she has guided our student club. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Tina, who's going to get our program started and introduce our wonderful guest speaker tonight.
Stop for 1 second. If you are not one of the 4 speakers tonight, would you mind muting yourself, please? I hear some background noise. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to mute myself.
Well, thank you, Laura. As she said, my name's Tina, so I'm a senior at PITT. I am the president of the WISE chapter here at PITT. And so, first of all, I'd just like to thank everybody, Laura for, coordinating this, Chinaza for being on this call, and everybody else. We're super excited to be launching this, WISE speaker series, even though it's virtual. So on a more personal note, WISE has been so important to me. I got here and the first thing I did was join this organization. So I'm super excited to be heading it now. We're all about uplifting women, and Chinaza, that quote that you had said, it really hit home to us. So we really were excited that you agreed to be on this call. So thank you again. But just giving a little background about Chinaza. So she is a senior co-captain on the Panthers women's volleyball team. Her career highlights are many. They include a 2-time ACC Freshman of the Week, an All-ACC freshman team, 2-time All-ACC academic team, 2-time ACC Player of the Week, and an All-ACC first team. So in 2019, she led the Panthers to go undefeated, 18-0 in the ACC for the first time, and they earned the number 6 overall seed, highest ever in the NCAA tournament. So she does a lot, but just in her role as a minority leader on the team, Ndee continues to be an advocate for social justice and creating an inclusive environment for athletes of color. Ndee's remarkable drive and dedication extends well beyond the court, where she is studying pre-med to fulfill her long-term professional goal of becoming a physician. So without further ado, I'm just getting started in some of the questions that we had for her. Just first and foremost, now, in addition to everything I've just covered, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Yeah, so all the things you said before, I was born in Nigeria. I came to America when I was around 5 or 6, and I was raised in Houston, Texas. I have 3 siblings. We're a family of 6. I think my mom's on the call. I'm really excited to do this. This is something I never would have done a couple of years ago. So I was really excited when you guys asked me to be a part of this.
Oh, we're excited to have you. So getting into what we'll be talking about today, with volleyball being a very white-dominated sport, what obstacles have you faced along the way?
Well, I guess I want to preface this question with the fact that I've led a pretty privileged life. I went to private school. I've had, a great family. I've grown up in a great home. So I think I need to start with that. I think a lot of kind of the obstacles that I faced have been less overt maybe than some examples of racism or discrimination that other people might talk about. That's why people talk a lot about microaggressions, right? They're small. And I always kind of compare them to like little like cuts, like little paper cuts, you know? It's not necessarily in the moment, it hurts. And, you know, but it's small enough that you can kind of move on. But unfortunately, those cuts like add up over time, right? So, and those cuts are kind of little reminders that either you shouldn't be there, or you're not like us, you're not like the others. So that's really what I've kind of faced, I would guess. You know, I'm very used to being one of the only Black girls in the room, or one of few Black girls in the room. And those kind of situations kind of force you to, often, not all the time, but sometimes they force you to kind of make yourself a little bit smaller and fit yourself into a box where you try your best to fit in and make other people around you comfortable. And that's just something that I've recently been trying to work my way out of, because as we all know, you know, bad habits are hard to break. And living a life in a way that is kind of aimed at making other people comfortable, at the end of the day, it's a disservice to you. And I think that's kind of what I've learned throughout this time, is being myself and being open about the things I'm passionate about, and all those kind of things are kind of helping me in the long run become a better person. But even specifically to volleyball, like, you know, it's not necessarily about people being mean or people being exclusive. It's often just feeling alone or like an anomaly, right? You know, you walk into a tournament and you see like 3 other girls that look like you. So it's not even necessarily about anything anyone says. It's just about the environment that you're in, feeling like you have to represent almost an entire race of people, which can be really, really frustrating and really draining, right? Because then it feels like you can't just like lose yourself in the sport that you love. It feels like you have to kind of carry all these extra burdens that other people may not have to carry. So.
Thank you for that. That was extremely interesting too. I really enjoyed hearing about the microaggressions too. I guess I never had put it in that perspective about, you know, how you could get over it, but it still kind of hurt. And talking about, you know, being able to speak up. So how have you been able to find your voice when it comes to speaking out loud about, you know, social injustice? I know you had said earlier that, you know, you probably wouldn't have done this a few years ago and talked about it. So how have you really come to, I guess, yeah, speak up about this?
I think it's a combination of things. I think with kind of the recent national conversation around it and everyone's kind of talking about it, it felt wrong to not join that conversation, because it felt too important to kind of ignore. Obviously, we've been in quarantine. We haven't really been going a lot of places. And usually in the past, you know, I would use my activities. I would use volleyball, or when I used to play basketball, I used basketball, or use my homework or something like that to distract me from, you know, cases of police brutality and things like that. But obviously with the pandemic, I couldn't distract myself. I kind of had to face it. And I also think it was just me growing up and me realizing that this is something that matters to me, and I can't push it to the side just because it might make people uncomfortable. And in fact, like the people may push away from me may end up being people that I don't really want to be around at the end of the day. So yeah, it was just a combination of a lot of factors, but I just feel more free, I guess, in that way, because I don't feel like I have to censor myself, you know, in the things I care about.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So during these times where you feel like you're the only one in the room that's different than everyone else, what have you done to comfort yourself, or what skills have you, you know, obtained along the way to deal with that sort of thing?
I would say, well, I have come from a home, especially my parents have been very into the idea of like knowing your worth and knowing who you are and not letting outside kind of opinions or outside factors sway that. And I mean, it took me a while to like internalize it, but I've heard that message a lot. And I think that really helped me in those times. I think having supportive people around you helps. You know, I would look for, you know, other Black girls in my area, or I would look for, you know, especially when I went to high school, you know, my main friend group we were like all the Black girls in the school, basically, you know, and having that sense of community is really important, because then you feel like, you know, even if they're not necessarily with me on the court, I feel like they're with me as just far as like a part of my life. And I just think generally, you know, middle and high school are weird times for everyone, right? Like you're just an awkward person, you're growing up, you know? So just, I think a part of it is just me growing up and me kind of finding my self-worth, like my intrinsic self-worth, like that has nothing to do with anything I could do or anything anyone could do to me. Yeah, I think those are the main things.
So you've been speaking up more and more about this, and you know it caught our attention too. So how have you been using this platform to help those that have had similar struggles to you?
I think I kind of undersell myself sometimes as far as like what my presence can do for others. You know, I know how important it was to me, especially like at my volleyball club growing up, like to see other older Black girls, you know, achieving, or to see Black girls playing on college teams or even on professional teams on TV. And I know how important that was to me. And I never thought like I could be that for someone else. But I think especially in a sport like volleyball where it's, you know, it is mostly white, I think me just being here and just like kind of being myself in this space is really important. Because I think that alone can kind of show people like, hey, this is someone who you can look up to. This is someone who can do the things that you want to do, you know? So yeah, I don't necessarily, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough, right? Like I feel like I'm just here and I'm just trying, but I'm not, you know, all these protesters in the street. Like I'm not like in the, you know, in the fight, but I think in my own little way, it's about, you know, changing your little pockets, right? In little pockets of friends. And I think that is something that I can do. And I think sometimes with conversations around race, and it's hard to kind of buy in when you don't have a face behind these like terms of like microaggressions and stuff like that. Like it's hard to like really buy in if you don't have like a name or a story behind it. So I think me being here and being a name and being that story and telling you these are my experiences, I think that can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I can definitely tell you that I'm sure a lot of girls look up to you as a role model. But then going into that, so who are some role models that you look up to and how have they influenced you?
Oh Lord, I have so many. I'm just gonna talk about this because I wrote this in the article. I think growing up, one person for me, she doesn't even play volleyball, but Serena Williams was like my queen from day one. And even more so now, I think there are a lot of parallels. Obviously, she's a Black woman in a sport that's mostly white. She's really outspoken about what she believes in. She's strong, you know, she dominates. And I think growing up, seeing someone like that in that kind of environment, achieving as high as she did, it really, really made an impact on me. So, that's like the golden right standard for me. But even just, you know, my club coaches, you know, I had my 16th year, I had a Black coach, her name is Tara Crossbattle, and she was on the Olympic team, and just having her as a coach was amazing. And just like seeing how much she's done, and she's in the Hall of Fame, and having that kind of influence in my life was really important. So, you know, it's hard to say because, you know, you get inspired by like little moments of people, but those are two people that really like stand out in my head of people who've really achieved highly and like people who I just want to be like.
Yeah, I think everyone would say Serena Williams too, because she is, you know, she's up there in achievements and just in telling everyone off and doing what she wants to do. So I like that. But so specifically at, you know, PITT, in regards to diversity and inclusion, where would you like to see us being in the next 5 years? And that could be the university, and that could be PITT athletics, or even just the volleyball team.
I guess like generally kind of the realization I think a lot of people are having now is, you know, I mean, this isn't the first time we've talked about diversity and inclusion departments, right? Everyone had a diversity and inclusion department before March 2020, right? So it wasn't like there was this brand new thing that no one had ever heard about. I think the kind of conversation was about like specificity, right? because it's hard to really speak to the needs of a certain group of people if one, those people aren't in the room, or two, those people are in the room, but they're not really given a voice or really given the kind of encouragement or support or just a safe space to kind of talk about their experiences. So anyway, that's all to say, like, I think PITT could do with some specificity. I think there's been an initiative called Panthers United, which has kind of laid out some plans that they've wanted, and I think those are great. So things like having more Black administrators, having a Black mental health counselor, you know, exploring the ways that Black student athletes are treated in regards to academics, you know, especially with Black students in really high revenue generating sports like football and basketball. Being more involved in communities that are right next to us, really, that are mostly Black, you know, with community service events or just with general, like, more interactions, I think is really important. You know, everyone undergoes diversity training. I think, you know, there could be a little more specificity as far as diversity training is concerned. I think a lot of people have been tossing around the term anti-racism training recently. I think that would be really important. But yeah, I think, you know, we've seen recently how many Black students have been stepping up and just, like, really speaking up for themselves and showing a lot of vulnerability. And
she's one of the girls that plays volleyball.
I think, like, giving those students
she's speaking about
a response that matches their
Sorry,
volleyball player that she is today.
sir, we can hear you. Can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. If you're not one of the 4 speakers, if you could mute yourself, that would be awesome. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, you're fine. So anyway, I think, you know, with, like, the leadership that a lot of student athletes have shown over the past couple of months, I think I'm just, like, eager to see how the university will match that. Because obviously it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to kind of put yourself out there. So I just hope that PITT and PITT Athletics kind of matches that vulnerability with, you know, truly listening and kind of implementing these things that they're kind of throwing around.
And for those of you who don't know, PITT just did an initiative where all freshmen will actually have to take a mandatory class that teaches microaggressions and how to combat racism. So that's pretty cool. It's only 1 credit, and I believe it's free for all students. So that's something that, you know, I think is definitely really important and could definitely help us in the future. So and just ending everything that we've talked about, what advice would you offer to other females or minorities as they pursue their goals?
That's a hard question. I guess one thing that's really helped me is just recognizing your values and sticking to those. I think with a lot of kind of the way our world works, there can be a lot of distractions and a lot of things that can kind of scatter your focus. And I think one thing that's really helped me is just, like, being clear about what I want and what I'm gonna do to get it. I think finding a community is really important. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a community of people who are your race or your gender or whatever, but I think it is important to have people like that in your life, because there is, you know, something to be said for shared perspective and people who understand exactly what you're going through. I think it's important to not minimize yourself and not underestimate the power of, like, what you can bring to a table or what you can bring to a conversation or to a group or to a team. You know, I think it's important to kind of recognize your value and recognize the things that, or the progress you've made and the kind of contributions that you can provide for people. I think a lot of times it can be really important really easy for me to kind of reduce the things that I do and to not give myself any credit. And I think it's important to empower yourself, because that allows other people to look at you and gain kind of inspiration from that, and also people who look like you, to see that, you know, there's someone out there who's doing what I want to do and doing it well. So
Yeah, well, you are very accomplished. I mean, I've already listed off all of your athletic achievements, but being pre-med as well and all ACC academic and, just regular volleyball team, that's pretty impressive. So that's all the questions I had, though, Kelly. So if you wanted to take it over from here and kind of, go with the Q&A. Kelly, you're muted. Chinaza,
Getting
thanks
there.
for answering all my questions, though.
Of course. Thank you.
So one of the things I personally want to ask before we get to this is, as a woman of color, how can others best support you who are not in diversification class, help you be more comfortable? What can we do as a population to help support you guys? This is a conversation that we're trying to have universally right now.
Right. I think the most I'll ask of people is to kind of pay attention to your own circle, right? Like, what are you saying? What are your friends saying? How do your friends talk about people that aren't like you? How do your parents talk about people that aren't like you, right? I think there are a lot of spaces that, or honestly really Black people like can't reach, So I think that's kind of been one of the main things I've talked about, is like being an ally without needing a Black person to be in the room, standing up for people without needing a Black person to be your friend, right? Like, without needing to know any Black people, that's kind of the next step, I think, for me, because, sometimes it can be easy to kind of write people off and be like, they're just ignorant and I'm not going to address that. But like, that doesn't help the people who are vulnerable, right? So that's like the baseline, I guess, is just to make sure like you are paying attention to your circle and especially yourself, and like checking yourself. It's like, hey, what am I saying? What am I doing? Like, what actions am I taking? Are these actions in alignment with the things that I say I value? And then just generally, I would just say like education's really important, I think. And not education as just like reading one book and then like thinking like, okay, that's enough. I've learned everything I need to learn about racism for my day, right? Like, consistently like kind of making yourself consider race in a way that you maybe haven't before, right? Because sometimes it can be easy to kind of write things off like, oh, that doesn't have anything to do with this, or it's not about race, or, and I think just like kind of making that an active part of your life, I think is really important. Okay. There's a lot of structural stuff and like systemic stuff that obviously needs to be addressed, but I think like the day-to-day conversations are kind of what's going to change people's hearts really at the end of the day. So that's what I would say as far as allyship.
That's very, very, very good advice. Very good advice. So somebody asked, how have you been keeping busy during COVID, and what have you learned about yourself?
How have I been keeping busy during COVID? We have been doing a lot of stuff with our team. While we were all home, we were doing Zoom workouts over Zoom. I've been taking classes this whole time. I took classes over the summer. I've been having more time to spend with my family when I was home, which was really nice. So I think I got really close with my family, especially my siblings, while I was home. I've been gaining some new hobbies. I've started doing yoga, which is something I never thought I would ever do in my life. I've started reading again, which has been really cool. So just little things here and there. And what did I learn about myself? Geez.
Are you comfortable with not having such a fast pace between at school and anything else that you do with, I mean, your schedule must be back to back, crazy busy. I mean, are you comfortable just having a little bit of peace?
I wasn't at first, because I felt like I was just like, sometimes I felt like I was just like sitting around, and I was like, what? Like I need to be doing something, Mm-hmm. But it was nice. I think it was a good reminder for me that like I need to find things in my life that are not volleyball and school, right? Like I need to find things that recharge me outside of volleyball and school, and in turn, like those things will make me a better volleyball player and make me better at school because I'm not running on empty. So that's kind of something I've embraced recently.
Okay. What advice would you give to Black girls in high school who are considering joining a predominantly white athletic team?
I think the same thing I kind of said earlier about finding your group is important. I think it's important to I think like not everyone's built for like calling someone out if they said something ignorant. Like not everyone's built for that. So I would never say that that's something I would advise someone, right? Because at the end of the day, like some people might just not want to kind of force those conversations in situations like that. So I think just having a group outside of that team can be really important. I think within that team, making sure that you kind of align yourself with people who value you as a person and less just like as, you know, their Black friend or, you know, just what you could do on the court or on the field or kind of whatever the sport may be. I think not attempting to put pressure on yourself to represent an entire race of people. I think just like letting yourself enjoy the sport that you love for what it is, instead of kind of making it something bigger than it necessarily has to be. Yeah, that's what I would say.
And that's good advice. I mean, they are children after all. You want them to enjoy
Right.
the sport, right? So, but you also want them to be treated fairly and feel like they're part of the team. So that's paramount for sure. Okay, let's see. What do you say to people that feel professional athletes are rich and should not join the conversation of Black Lives Matter or protest?
I
Although
mean,
I kind of am seeing the opposite of that, but just answering the question, asking the question.
right. I think sometimes with, with athletes, there's sort of a dehumanization that happens, right? They end up being treated more as machines or as things for entertainment rather than like the full opinionated, passionate person that they can be. So I think with any athlete is a person and they're allowed to care about things that they care about. So, you know, I think your net worth has really nothing to do with that, you know, and especially for Black athletes. I mean, you know, you hear stories all the time about Black professional athletes who are, you know, racially profiled, and then as soon as they find out that there's someone important to white people, basically, then they're like, oh, okay, never mind, we won't do anything. So, you know, this isn't something that they necessarily escape just because they're rich. So I think it's just a kind of reminder, like everyone's human, everyone has opinions and thoughts and feelings and can be allowed to express that just like anyone else.
Okay. This is a fun question. You're going to like this one. So what makes PITT volleyball different from other teams in terms of culture?
Oh, goodness. A lot of things. One thing we really value at this program is learning and growth. And that's something we've really bought into, is every day coming in with a mindset of a learner and just wanting to be better every single day. We talk a lot about family and how you fight harder for the people you care about. Especially, you know, we spend a lot of time with these people. So it's nice to know that, you know, all of the people on my team are people that I truly like actually love and genuinely care about. We work really hard. You know, we don't cut corners. You know, we just put in the time, which I think is really important. We have obviously a great coaching staff. I think that's also important. You know, obviously the girls are a big part of the team, but leadership accounts for a lot. And I think our coaches are kind of the pillars of our program and just like make our program what it is right now. Yeah, I mean, obviously I have a lot of good things to say about a team because I love my team. They have always been a team that has talked about inclusivity and just being an inclusive and just friendly environment when everyone feels like they can be vulnerable, because it is vulnerable at times to be an athlete.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have a team that values that vulnerability and encourages that courage every day to just come in and you know, be open to messing up and, you know, be open to not being good at something at first and kind of growing and learning together. So
Okay, love that. Love that. And I love that everybody has that sense of family, which I think that is a very similar voice that all PITT teams have. And I know that Heather has been very, very instrumental in developing that kind of culture. So kudos to her. She was one of our Women of Excellence recipients too last year. So
okay.
I'm glad to see that transition and change. Mentioned that you got back to reading. Someone, I don't know, you might be starting your own book club here, kid. So what was the last book that you just read? Someone wants to know.
Oh goodness. So this is not even close to what we're talking about.
That's okay.
But the last book I read was, hold on, I need to remember it. What was the last book I read?
I always forget the titles too. So
No, that's exactly what I'm forgetting right now. The last book I read was actually a young adult book. It recently came out. It's fiction. It's called Felix Ever After. It's just a cute book about a Black trans boy, and I think I've been trying to read a little more diversely recently, and so I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good story. I'd recommend it. That's the last book I read.
Good. Okay, somebody is saying you are a role model on and off the court for my middle school basketball volleyball team, being an academic All-American and a beast on the court. What advice do you have for teenage girls who are trying to advance to high school and beyond the sport of volleyball? I should have put my glasses on for that one.
I think something we talk about a lot as a program is being an all-around player. I think that's kind of the best way you can set yourself up to go to the next level, is making sure you don't kind of pigeonhole yourself into certain skills. And, you know, developing, obviously you're going to have a position because that's just the nature of the sport, but developing your all-around game, I think is important because it makes you a more versatile player and it makes you ultimately more recruitable, because coaches don't feel like you have a limitation. So that's something I would say.
Okay, I think this question might be from your mother.
It is.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, Mom. We're happy to have you here. She says, do you feel PITT is at a point where you can tell a Black girl to choose to come here? I was very nervous when you chose a team that didn't have Black females on the team.
I think so. I think that, I can really only speak for the volleyball team, so I'll just speak for that. I do think that the athletic program as a whole is inclusive, but I'm just going to speak to my personal experience. You know, I have never felt unwelcome, which, a lot of my struggles with speaking up or speaking out were mostly because of me. It wasn't necessarily because of the environment that I was in. But I was also nervous when I chose to come here and not seeing any Black girls on the team, because, that was basically my whole life, right? All the sports teams I've been on, or most, I would say, have been where I am one of the only, or one of two or three. So I was nervous about doing that again, right? And doing that for 4 years. But I can confidently say that our program has been down for inclusivity before it was the thing to do on social media, right? Before it was everyone releasing statements about how they support their Black student athletes and how they care. The care was there from day one. And I really value that for me, especially because it allowed me to feel like it allowed me to feel like I didn't have to overcompensate to prove that I deserved to have a spot at the table. Like it felt like I had it, right? I had earned it already. And I could just like kind of grow into myself in an environment that made it safe to do so. So.
Okay. Hope mom feels better. I think she's doing okay. She seems like she's doing okay. That was very sweet. Do you have any recommendations for yoga practices that you enjoy? I recently started yoga during a quarantine as well, and I'm always looking for new practices.
I am such a beginner. I don't even feel like I'm at all able to really give advice. I think the thing that has, I mean, obviously there's like the flexibility piece of it, but I think one thing that's really helped me do is kind of center myself mentally. I'm a person who like has a lot of things on my mind at once and like cares about a lot of things at once. And I think it's nice to do something that kind of requires your full attention. So I think like using yoga as like a kind of like a channel for your feelings, you know, and a way to kind of stop all the noise and, you know, have a kind of like a selfish moment, right? You're doing this for yourself. You're kind of taking care of yourself. I think that's what it's helped me with. As far as like technical advice on yoga, I really feel like I'm not the expert for that, but I do enjoy it.
So we'll divert it to somebody else, okay?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny that you mention the art of yoga in terms of getting rid of the noise in your head. And you're right about that, because it's one of those things that you really do have to concentrate 100% in terms of the contortions of what your body's trying to do. And I don't think that necessarily is the same for other sports. I remember hearing, I can't remember what, it was an athlete who played basketball, and he was so used to playing basketball, he says, I just get out there and I think about all the things I have to do, but I just keep throwing the ball. The same thing went for a musician who was playing on stage, musician. I want to say it was Blake Sheldon, but don't quote me on that. He said, I've been playing so long, I just go up there and all this stuff goes rolling through my mind. So it's kind of nice to be able to get that noise out of your head, you know, because we all have it until we go to sleep and then it converts into our dreams. Okay, let's see. Any advice to PITT on how to avoid co-opting the movement as a branding/marketing effort, like some companies have done, as opposed to truly listening and being an amplifier for voices like your own? That's a great question.
That's a great question. I think something that's really important is allowing the people who need their voices heard to lead. And, you know, obviously like the Black student athletes at the school, for example, aren't the athletic director, right? Or aren't like administrators. But I think allowing their voices to lead kind of the actions that are being taken is important. I think that makes it more authentic. I think crediting the people who come up with ideas, crediting the people who come up with initiatives, you know, and making sure their names are put out there like this is their work, I think is really important. You know, obviously it's kind of become almost kind of like a to-do list kind of thing, right? Like, okay, release a statement, okay, we can check it off, right? Or like, okay, we've said Black Lives Matter on our page, now we can kind of move on. I think the real test is longevity as well. I think if it's co-opted by people who don't really care about it, then it's gonna burn out quickly, right? So I think longevity is gonna be really important in the coming months and even years after this. It's like, how has this time really changed the way institutions are run? And if that is a change, then I think that's more genuine and authentic to the messages that people are speaking about.
100%. Someone said that question in above it. So this is interesting. 100% of the eligible members of the PITT volleyball team are now registered to vote. Can you speak on the importance of voting? Which is great. Kudos to you guys.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's kind of more, it's funny because I was born in Nigeria and I came here when I was 5 or 6. So I'm not a US citizen. I'm currently a green card holder, but I'm not a US citizen, so I can't vote. So I think that's why voting has kind of been important to me, because a lot of times, you know, there are people like me in this country who the people vote for, or like the policy people vote for, people are affected by that, right? But they don't have a hand in changing that. So, you know, civic engagement is always important, but I think, you know, matching your morals and your values with the policies and the people you choose to support is really important. I think that's, you know, people say like politics is moral is an action. I think that's really important. Like if you were going to say you're about this, like who are the people that you're supporting that are in alignment with those values? Like are the people you're supporting in alignment with those values? So that's why I think voting is important, because one is it's often kind of selfless in a way, like not everything you're going to vote for is going to directly help you, but it might help people who are not like you. And then just kind of making sure that the people you want in office, in any office, from president all the way down to a city council or school board or whatever, you know, making sure those people kind of represent the values of, you know, those that elect them.
Okay. This is going to be a little bit more personal. I do work with former professional athletes, and I have heard numerous stories about the colleagues that I work with in terms of how they have been racially profiled. And some of the stories, they all bring tears to my eyes. It's deplorable in a lot of ways. Can you share a story where you have been racially profiled and how it made you feel?
Yeah. Let me think of one. I guess this isn't like the worst thing that can happen to someone, but so the high school that I went to for in Texas is a really well-known, wealthy, kind of elite private school, and it's mostly white. And it's known in Houston as being kind of one of the top schools in the city. And this isn't kind of one event, but it's just like a cluster of events. You know, anytime I would walk around anywhere with my school shirt on, I would be met with, you know, surprise, I guess, that I was able to get into that school, or surprised that, you know, that I was, I guess, good enough to get into the school. And, you know, it was just like people like, oh, like you go to that school? And like comments like that. Or people, you know, assuming that the only reason I was at the school was because I was an athlete. And kind of, it's just moments of people reducing someone to something because that's the only way they can understand them, you know, and like not really letting someone be a full-fledged, like full human being, like, you know, kind of boxing someone in. I think those are like the ones that I remember the most, because one, they were constant, and two, you know, it kind of made me feel like I suddenly had to like prove to the person, like, no, I deserve to get into school, and no, I deserve to be here. And I think that kind of affected me in situations where I didn't need to feel that way, you know, and that's something that I'm still fighting, is making sure like I'm not overcompensating to make sure that people feel like I deserve to be in a room or at a table or whatever. So yeah, that's like that was one of the main things. It was just like people just being surprised that I had a brain and could write and had good grades and things like that. Really.
I will tell you, as a business person, any seat at any table that you can sit on, they are the lucky ones to have you there. Truly.
Thank you.
So you just keep doing what you're doing. You brought up a really good point, because sometimes it's the way people, it's not always what they say, it's the tone that they say it in. So for someone to say to you, oh, you go there? So in their head, their back talk, their mind talk is saying to you, making you feel like they think you don't deserve to go there. So I think that is something that we all need to be cognizant of, regardless of whether it's a diverse situation or any situation, that we have to be cognizant of the tone that we use with people so that it doesn't stir a question. And I know it's harder and harder to do these days because we're all texting. I'm sure we've all probably misinterpreted a text because of the tone of the text because it was hurried. So, maybe that's something we should all consider too.
Mhm.
Let's see. How do you balance everything with academics and with school and volleyball and?
I think something that's helped me is kind of knowing my priorities and kind of sticking to them. I think it's really easy to say like, oh, I really care about school. And it's harder to be like, I care about school enough that I'm not going to do this thing with my friend because I need to study. Or I care enough about school that I'm not going to start this new show that I want to watch, or, whatever. Like, I think that's been really important to me, is just knowing like, these are the things I value. These are the things I want to achieve. And like, this is how I'm going to have to do it, and kind of sticking to that. Easier said than done, but that's kind of been like my driving force through college. I think kind of embracing the hills and valleys of everything. There were times in the past that I would like get a bad grade on a test and be like, oh my God, I'm never going to go to medical school. And just like letting like small bumps and kind of small victories and small bumps in the road kind of be what they are in the moment, and not letting them cloud like the journey, right? And then the third thing is probably, like I said before, finding things that are outside of those two things, and like making sure that I deliberately make time to like read a book that I want to read, or watch a YouTube video or something like that, and just like letting myself have those moments, because while I do use volleyball as a distraction from school, and like school as a distraction from volleyball, I need to find distractions outside of those two things. So just like actually like allowing myself to have interests that aren't those two things, and like not feeling like I constantly have to be productive, right? Like you feel like you constantly have to be going, It's like, I can be fully present for a practice. I can be fully present for when I'm studying, and I can also be fully present for when I'm doing my nails or whatever, It's just like letting myself kind of fall into those things, and not letting myself kind of box myself into certain activities.
Good. Let's see. A couple more questions here.
Okay.
Volleyball, when do you think it'll start? Or you see you on the court?
So we just recently heard it will start in, what date is it? Like 2 or 3 weeks. But I mean, obviously this is not going to be like any other season. It's going to be condensed. It's going to be different as far as like our playing schedule and things like that. But I think we're supposed to start in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah.
Know that you mentioned that you are from Houston. Is your family still there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So somebody wants to know how has your family been affected by the incidences that have occurred surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement in Houston? How has that affected you by not being able to be with them?
I don't really, how do I answer this question? I think it's just a question of like living with it, honestly, because that's, this isn't the first time this has happened, right? Like these aren't the first names or hashtags or whatever that people have been tweeting or posting about on social media. And I think, sometimes you can get in the habit of just like kind of taking the hurt and like just like learning how to live with it. Obviously, like our family's pretty like we're on the same page about like where we stand on things, and at least my parents and like me and my older sister are pretty outspoken about what we believe in. But I think it's just kind of living with it, honestly.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. We don't want you to have to live with it. You shouldn't have to live with it, you know? So for those of us that are on this call, challenge you all to make sure she doesn't have to live with it anymore. But we are part of the change, and that we do speak our voice. And now just embrace how wonderful it is to know people of every culture in this country. We are so blessed. We're so very blessed. Any last words you have for us? You're gonna make me cry, and that can't be easy sometimes. But today I was doing pretty well.
I think someone asked in the chat about how I got into volleyball. Yeah.
Did somebody ask you that? I must have missed it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just didn't want to ignore their question. So how did I become interested in volleyball? So actually volleyball, when I started playing from my middle school, and it was very just something to do until basketball season rolled around. I was a basketball girl. Like, that was my first love. But volleyball looked fun, and my friends were in it, and the coach was nice. So I was like, let me just do it until basketball season comes. And then actually my teammate, I used to play AAU basketball, so like club basketball, and my teammate on my basketball team told me like, hey, you should come to this volleyball tryout and just try it out. And I was like, okay. Like, I had like no expectations, no nothing, virtually no knowledge about the sport. I just kind of, went along with it. And I went to the tryout, and I was equally parts like really into it and also like very lost. But as I kind of like grew and like learned more about the sport, I just fell in love with it. I found myself looking forward to volleyball practices and dreading basketball practices. And, I tried to balance it at one point. But I just knew that volleyball was it for me. And I eventually kind of really made the switch, like going into high school. So like my ninth grade was when I really was like, okay, I'm gonna do this volleyball thing. But yeah, volleyball was not something I could have ever seen myself playing in college. Like, I really thought I was gonna be a basketball player. But here I am.
So as we close out, what are the 3 things that WISE Pittsburgh and the club at University of Pittsburgh can do to help support diversity and change? What are the 3 things that we can do the rest of this year to help support that?
I think one of the first things is kind of addressing diversity within the organization, and like looking around the room is like, hey, what kind of people are in the room? That's kind of how the conversation can start. So I think that can be important. I think always encouraging education. People don't know what they don't know, right? And I think sometimes it can just be important to just say like, hey, like, let's just all like read a book together, or let's just all like listen to this podcast or watch a documentary or something like that together. I think having that education can kind of give you a little more, I guess, confidence in your knowledge. I think it's hard to like really stand up for something when you don't know a lot about it. I mean, people do that, but I think it's like a lot easier to feel like rooted in, your knowledge of a situation, and kind of use that to guide your actions, right? So education is always important. And then I think, I mean, not to get into voting again, but I think just engagement with like, hey, who are we supporting? What kind of people are we, endorsing, or getting to state and local elections? Because honestly, like school boards can really change a lot for people, right? So, kind of finding those little pockets. But yeah, those are the 3 things I would say.
That's excellent. Well, we really, really appreciate you being on this call with all of us. It has been very enlightening, and you are a really special person. And your brilliance just actually radiates right through the screen, and so thoughtful. Truly, Mom, you raised a really good one here. So she did a great job, and just because she's on the phone, we'll give her all the credit, right? But it was wonderful to have you. Do you have any other questions or comments you would like to add?
No, this is awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. Seriously.
Okay.
This is amazing.
Well, Christina, please make sure that you reach out to the volleyball team and to see, you know, what kind of partnership we can have with them. Would be fun. We usually try to go see a female basketball team, which we were able to squeeze in before COVID land hit. But we'd love to help support your team as well once you're allowed to have fans in the stand. So make sure that you and Christina keep communicating, and we'll see what we can do to support you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all your questions, ladies. It was good to see so many faces. I miss my Wise family so much. You all look beautiful, and hopefully I can see you all in person and give you all great big hugs. And just stay well, please, all of you. Stay well. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, guys.